In this episode of the Leadership Atlas, we travel to South Africa, a country known for its extraordinary vibrancy, diversity, and powerful history in rebuilding community following profound change. This year, the University of Johannesburg celebrates its 20th anniversary since its founding, and it's an opportune moment to reflect on the leadership philosophies which have shaped its development as an institution. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Professor Letlhokwa George Mpedi, Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the University of Johannesburg. He is a leader and law scholar who has written compellingly about Ubuntu as a source of ethical leadership and societal impact. Welcome so much, Letlhokwa, to this episode, and we're looking forward to discussing this very interesting philosophy with you. So let's get started and tell us more about Ubuntu as a philosophy.
Ubuntu is a question, in my view, of how we understand ourselves as beings whose humanity and purpose is realized through our relationships with others. So it's not about us as individuals, it's about how we interrelate with others. So in this sense, Ubuntu reframes impact as a relational measured by the extent to which one contributes to the well-being of the community and affirms the humanity of others, not that of an individual.
So how do you see Ubuntu lived across the University of Johannesburg community of staff and students?
Ubuntu is ingrained in the very fabric of the University of Johannesburg, UJ in short. You know, 1 year ago, we embarked on a bold journey with two defining pillars. We call that societal impact and sustainability. Let me start with societal impact. Within our context, we say societal impact means that every decision we make, every program we design, and every partnership we forge must answer one fundamental question. How does this serve the communities beyond our gates? So it's not just about our campuses. It's about those that are around us. Similarly, sustainability through environmental, social, economic, and institutional lenses is our covenant with future generations. So it's not about the present, it's also about the future. I'll give you an example, but before I give you examples, we say this requires us to be stewards, not just managers. So let me go back to the examples. I'll give you just a couple. One such example, we partnered with one of the big banks in Africa called ABSA. We partnered with one section of this bank called ABSA Business Banking with one charitable organization called Kubeka Charity. And we distributed over 100 bicycles, Jenny, to grade 11. So grade 11 is a year before the final year of high school schooling in South Africa. And we were deliberate. We didn't just go to the final year. We went to grade 11 because it was towards the end of the year. And we said to these kids, if you pass your grade 11 and you pass your final year of high school, then you can keep the bicycles. And this is at a remote village in South Africa. These kids used to wake up at 4 a.m. to be at school at 8. I mean, imagine when you arrive at school at 8 after waking up at 4 a.m., you are dead tired. How can you focus? How can you concentrate? That school is a school that we've been working with. Their pass rate for the final year of school, we call it matric, was about 54%. After working in partnership with another generous donor, we set up a learning center. That school, their pass rate for the final year matric went up to 92.4%. Now we got the final matric results. They went up to 94.2%. And that is what we call societal impact. Now with these bicycles, we are confident that these school kids will be able to concentrate, and these bicycles will help them also to do some errands for their parents. Another quick example, this village is arguably the first smart village in Africa because our engineering professors in electrical engineering in partnership with Schneider Electric South Africa They set up solar with using solar panels. They set up a solar bakery. They set up electric solar powered lights. They set up all those things. So they've got systems that are solar powered that can be controlled in Johannesburg. For those who may not know, this village is more than 400 kilometers from Joburg. But systems can be controlled in Johannesburg to empower these villages. Now they've got women that are employed at these bakeries. Only one man worked at this village. Now they've got food gardens and so on. This is what we call societal impact and is connected with sustainability. Let me pause there, but there are many such examples that a university can do with local communities.
Those are very, very powerful examples. And I think in some respects, it often can show how something quite simple like a bicycle,
Yes.
obviously along with other things, can
Yeah.
make such a significant difference
Yeah.
in students' learning. In your writing, you talk
Yeah.
about the importance of ethical leadership,
Yeah.
um, and how it requires honesty and accountability and integrity. Can you tell us more about how you see ethical leadership, and it's particularly where trust has been eroded?
If we are to build on this concept through the lens of leadership, then I argue that it should be acknowledged that leadership is for others too.
Mm,
We should not look at it as just positional leadership. I mean, if we have any hope of building a strong and capable state, once again, especially for a country like South Africa, predicated on ethical leadership, the priority needs to be on building trust through demonstrable honesty and integrity. This, in my opinion, calls for a stand against corruption in every form. For
mm,
instance, accountability and transparency are
mm,
the very tenets, in my opinion, of this leadership approach, even when this can seem politically charged. Similarly, sustainable development, I argue, finds roots in an ethical foundation. I mean, development, Jenny, that is inclusive
mm.
and environmentally conscious speaks to the Ubuntu principle of responsibility, not just for the present, but for future generations. If we've got leaders that steal, money that is meant to build schools, these leaders are not only stealing from the present generations, they are stealing from future generations. So it doesn't only affect the present, but it's also about the future. When you look at sustainability, we must also look at its broadest form, in the sense that corruption doesn't only impact the present, but also the future generations. So this, in my opinion, reminds us that leadership is really about stewarding resources wisely so that all may benefit, not only now, but also in future.
In your recent book, From Predator to Prey, you drew on the African wild for some fresh perspectives on leadership. Can you tell us more about this fascinating connection and what you learned while writing this book?
In From Predator to Prey, I draw on African leadership philosophies that are deeply rooted in interconnectedness between people, the land, and of course, the wider ecosystem. One distinctive quality of these philosophies is their emphasis on communal responsibility and stewardship, reflected in both Ubuntu and in traditional ecological knowledge. I mean, writing this book reinforced for me that leadership is something lived and observed in nature itself. My family and I visit our famous Kruger National Park, which is one of the big nature reserves. And whenever we visit this park and observe animals, wild animals interacting with nature amongst themselves, there are so many leadership lessons that one picked. And by studying animal behavior in the wild, from the matriarchal guidance to cooperative strategy, I realized that there's so much to learn. So I was reminded that effective leadership requires patience, foresight, adaptability, and of course, ethical restraint. But above all, Jenny, the key lesson was that African leadership at its core is about belonging.
Mm.
It's about understanding our place within a larger web of life and leading in a way that sustains both community and future generations. We should never forget that everything we do today, we possess, we have a responsibility, to look after. It's not for us, it's for future generations.
Oh, those are very powerful concepts.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think what the universities have a unique role in
yeah,
fact in being able to articulate those
yeah.
and then I guess see them into practice.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so I'm just thinking about your students because they're often at the heart of change
yeah.
on campus,
Mm,
as we know from previous experiences. So,
mm,
how can African leadership
mm,
qualities
mm.
guide those students in determining their own leadership potential?
We've got a golden opportunity to mold them, to guide them, to strengthen them. One of my colleagues always says to me, says, "Hey, VC, I've got this strong feeling that the future of this country might be in the hands of some of the students that we have here. So we have to take that responsibility seriously, give these students opportunities that we never had, especially give them leadership training and responsibility. We do send our students abroad, on leadership programs, some to our U21 network partners for leadership training, and programs. And our students appreciate that a lot. So we take this very seriously. Each and every one of our students is a leader. And we should not look at them as every one of them is a VC. One of them or two or three will be VCs. But let's look at them as leaders in their own individual, unique ways. One of my predecessors used to say, you cannot be a leader if you can't lead yourself. If one can lead himself or herself in a way that when one sees a litter on the road and one picks it, is a leader. If one sees an elderly person struggling and helps that person, is a leader. Let's empower them to be responsible citizens of this world. If we can do that as institutions of higher learning, this world will be a better place. Teach them to care for the next person. We won't have these wars that we're seeing today. Teach them to respect the environment, lead with care, love one another. We will really turn this world into a better place. That is what we should aim for, and that is what we are trying to achieve at the University of Johannesburg.
The University of Johannesburg has a very strong global presence and growing international partnerships. Can you tell us how your values and leadership influence your approach to global collaboration and why it's important for both staff and students?
My approach to global collaboration is shaped by my leadership philosophy, which is grounded on this principle of Ubuntu and a strong sense of societal impact. While UJ is globally engaged, I believe in meaningful partnerships. I believe that these partnerships must be rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose rather than just prestige and or one could say extraction. This transactional relationship. What can I get from this person? How can I use this person to elevate myself? I believe that many institutions can learn from us, and we can also learn from others. And Ubuntu reminds us that collaboration is relational. It is about learning from or with one another, as I already indicated, and recognizing that dignity and value of different knowledge systems is extremely important. This approach, in my opinion, is particularly important in a globalized yet deeply unequal world. It encourages partnerships that are sustainable, that are ethical, but also attentive to local context, while still contributing to global knowledge production. Internationalization, in my opinion, when you approach it this way, becomes a means to bring an African perspective into global conversations while preparing graduates to lead with empathy and awareness in an interconnected world. I'm a product of these international exchanges. I spent time in Germany. I remember how students from Italy, had their eyes so wide open when they first heard me talk about Ubuntu. We talked for weeks about Ubuntu. They said, "But what is this?" And then I remember how I used to get so excited, listening to my, German friends talk about, friendship, what does it really mean, how it differs, and all those things. And I realized, but there's so much that I can learn from my European friends, and there's so much that they can learn from us. Once we forget that we can learn from each other, then that is the end of it all. So it's about give and take. We've got this saying in Zulu, Jenny. They say, izandla ziyagezana. What it means, it says, one hand washes another. Without this other hand, this hand will remain dirty. But this one, without this one, will remain dirty. This is the central connection between our partnerships as global university players. Without me, there's no you, Jenny. Without you, there's no me.
Well, can I say, of course, that in respect of the global connections,
Yeah,
the Universitas 21 network descended upon the University of Johannesburg
yeah,
last November
yeah,
for our global research and senior
yeah,
leaders meeting, and we had an utterly splendid time on
yeah,
your campus for a week, and it really was very much of a meeting of minds, people
yeah,
across the globe, all working together and connecting.
yeah,
And UJ was a splendid host, particularly with the very first time we brought all our research leaders and senior leaders
thank,
together.
thank
Now,
you.
I've just got one final question for you. If
Yeah.
you were to share one message for future leaders about what South Africa and the University of Johannesburg could offer for higher education, what would it be?
Innovation, excellence, we need that. It's what we do as institutions of higher learning. We need that. But there's one thing that we should not forget, and at UJ, we believe strongly in it. The future of higher education, yes, will be shaped by innovation and excellence, but values. Values will be at the core of everything that we do. And at UJ, we believe that it will be shaped on top of innovation and excellence by societal impact.
We've had a wonderfully productive and insightful conversation, and I think what you've really brought home in your responses in this episode is the importance of we the people in terms of shaping how universities engage not only with their staff and students but also the wider community around them, and that if we all work together we're going to achieve and be very strong in terms of our outcomes. So thank you so much for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Jenny.